Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 723 for the 14th of August, 2022. Richard Saunders coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Coming up on the show this week, I interview author Jon Guy about his new book called Think Straight. Think straight. It's something we all should try to do, is think clearly, think logically, think straight. Following that, it's the book of Tim with Tim Mendham, a bit of a different book of Tim this week. I went over to Skeptics headquarters here in Sydney to have a chat with Tim about the Australian Skeptics Bent Spoon Award, our annual award for what we consider to be nonsense, far-fetched, implausible, scams, that sort of thing. And speaking of Tim Mendham, after that we hear from Adrienne Hill, who reads the newsletter written by Tim Mendham. It all works, you see. Thank you, Adrienne, once again for your wonderful news report reading. After that, it's another skeptical poem by the late, great Jim Wilshire. And this week, Jim will be reading his poem, Bachelor of Seance. Then to round off the show, we dive back into those digital newspaper archives from around the world. This week, we're looking for references to a man I've met on several occasions, Ray Hyman, Professor Ray Hyman, a man I admire very much. Now, I said in last week's episode, this week I would be bringing you a report about Mind, Body, Spirit or Mind, Body, Wallet. Well, owing to scheduling and juggling segments and episodes, I've put that back a week until next week. I hope you're doing okay out there. Sometimes we all have those aches and pains, those twinges. I get every 6 months or something weird like that. I'll throw my back out. And by that I mean I'm got a little nerve that gets pinched in my back, and I'm sort of walk funny for a while. I remember some years ago I tried to pick up something incorrectly, too heavy, and for the next 2 days I was more or less confined to bed. Couldn't hardly move. Pinched nerves are no fun at all. So I do sympathise if that's what's happening to you. And if you're feeling unwell at the moment, maybe the Skeptic Zone can give you an hour's worth of interesting escapism. But now it's time for me to run downstairs and see if I have some, well, I wonder what you would have. If you were to run down the stairs when you're making a podcast, what would you have? While you're thinking about that, and while I'm thinking about that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Well, folks, critical thinking, straight thinking. This is something we always talk about here on the Skeptic Zone, and something I've been teaching now for, many years, trying to impart to people how important it is to be a critical thinker. But what does that mean? Joining me on the line from Colorado is a man who's put together a book about critical thinking called Think Straight. It's Jon Guy. Hello, Jon.
How's it going?
I'm doing very well. It's raining in Sydney. You wouldn't believe it. In fact, there's a bit of a storm happening while we talk, so hopefully the connection doesn't stop. But let's get right down to the point of this. You've written this book. What inspired you to write a book about something we all like to think about, which of course is straight thinking or critical thinking?
Well, I think the original plan in writing this book was to kind of just develop a basic curriculum for teaching rudimentary critical thinking skills. And I got to admit that I completely failed in that pursuit because I didn't write that. What I ended up writing was a 400-page book covering about as much as I could possibly fit into it. with the word allowance from my publisher.
So you got a bit carried away.
I got very, very much carried away.
And okay, well, let's get back to this whole idea of critical thinking, because I noticed in some of the information that you sort of touch on, or some of the information about the book at least, touching on people we might consider great critical thinkers like James Randi and so on. To what extent were you inspired by what we might call the pop culture critical thinkers?
I really liked James Randi was a big influence on me, as well as other popularizers of the genre, Michael Shermer. I really got into Carl Sagan as far as his, he has a lot of books on space and astronomy, and he does a really good job of incorporating critical thinking into his work. And a lot of that was extremely inspiring for me. I also really enjoyed Richard Dawkins' books. So just, science in general is kind of what led me towards critical thinking. And I think you share this view with me as well, is that, science is not just about, basic facts, what is, how does the scientific method work, and what are the results of lab work and so on. It's more about the process of understanding science and how it's conducted and how we can rely on its results and when we should and when we shouldn't. So I got really into the weeds on exactly what it means to be scientifically literate, and that's kind of what kept me going throughout writing the book. Fair
enough too. Now tell me about jargon. I mean, you sort of touched on it there. I mean, science is more than just doing experiments just in a cold manner. But also, you're going to talk about or mention this jargon. Why isn't it important to look at this issue? Or do you think that being too scientific, maybe using too much jargon, detracts sometimes from people's understanding of science?
In my experience, I found that learning jargon is one of the biggest hurdles to learning any subject, whether it's science or mechanics or what have you. Even like when I started learning about the brain and how the brain works and what all the different areas are and what everything is called. I mean, learning the jargon is like a huge part of it.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes sciencey stuff is very jargon laden. And one of the things I did in my book is anytime I'm introducing what I think is a term that somebody who's not very familiar with science or critical thinking might not have come across before, is I laid out kind of a vocabulary builder in the beginning of each chapter and introduced it with a definition, and then later on highlighted that term so that when it's being used in context, they can understand and refer back to the definition.
Right. Yes, probably a very good idea. I mean, you can't help but pick up jargon along the way. I guess I know more jargon than I really, if I thought about it, I must know more than I would think about from day to day, terms you hear again and again and again. But of course, when you get into the heavy sciences, jargon is very important by the time you reach that stage. But I can certainly understand how it could possibly put you off the basics of critical thinking. Now, let's talk about another topic that we love to talk about here on the Skeptic Zone, which is conspiracies. Conspiracy theory and critical thinking. And we like to think, well, there must be a lack of critical thinking if people believe in conspiracy theories, right?
Sure. Yeah. I actually have sparse throughout the manuscript are multiple references to conspiracy ideation and different conspiracy theories and different logical fallacies associated with the tendency to believe in conspiracies. But my final chapter is actually on just conspiracies. It was actually probably the funnest chapter I wrote. I really enjoyed it quite a bit because conspiracy ideation is such a fascinating concept. And like you said, it doesn't just boil down to a matter of lacking critical thinking skills, because there's a whole lot that goes into it between, prior beliefs and ideologies and the people who you're surrounded by and what culture you're in. All those contribute to whether or not you're susceptible to believing in conspiracy theories.
Absolutely. And of course, people have often said to the skeptics, or in my experience anyway, that we spend too much time worrying about insubstantial things like conspiracy theories. But we saw only in the last couple of years, especially in the United States, how conspiracy theories, well, let's talk about the attacks on the Capitol on the 6th of January, led largely by conspiracy theories, how they can do real damage. And maybe if some more of those people had read your book or will read your book, they might be better equipped to battle conspiracy theories.
I definitely agree with that. I think that conspiracy theories, I share the opinion of many skeptics that there's no such thing as a harmless pseudoscience, and conspiracy theories fall into that same category. If you believe, Joseph Uzinski does a lot of work on conspiracy theories, and he's pretty well established that if you believe in one conspiracy, you're more likely to believe in multiple conspiracies. And there's other research that outside of Uzinski's work that has kind of established this. So if you take the conspiracy about JFK or 9/11 truthers or something to that effect, if you have a tendency to believe something like that, you are probably more likely to believe that Pfizer is putting microchips in their vaccines, or, climate change is a hoax that's being, forced on us by a scientific elite of liberals who have some agenda to shut down big oil, or, whatever the more impactful conspiracy is. So I definitely think that it's important to understand kind of the psychology behind why conspiracy theories form and how to talk people out of them, or at least kind of walk through the conspiracy using the tools of critical thinking, such as logic and empiricism and reason, to try to help people understand. One of the things I put in my book is things are not always as they seem, but they're not always not as they seem. Sometimes exactly as they seem.
Sounds like a fascinating read. I look forward to having a look at your book. But in the meantime, the book is called Think Straight. It's by Jon Guy. And who is your publisher?
Prometheus.
Prometheus, of course. Our well-known publisher for books about critical thinking. I've got many books on my shelf as I glance over there by Prometheus Publishing. And where can people find out more about that book? Where can they go on the intertubes?
They can go on Amazon.com and search for Think Straight, an owner's manual for the mind. They can go on Barnes & Noble under the same title. They can get it on Roman and Littlefield's website. Pretty much anywhere where you buy your books, people can get it.
Sounds good to me, folks. I'll add a link to the book, probably on Amazon, on this week's show notes. Well, Jon Guy, thank you very much. And maybe, who knows, maybe there'll be a part 2 or another volume coming our way.
I am actually working on another project. I'm working on a chapter on energy medicine for a book series that is on investigating the effects of pseudoscience in clinical psychology. So it's a series that's being edited by Stephen Hupp and Jonathan Stea. So that is in the works and that is on the way. And you can also find some of my writings on thinkingispower.com.
Thinkingispower.com. That's with Melanie Tresick King, right?
Yeah, that's right. I've been writing for her for a while now.
Excellent. She was only a guest on the show a few weeks back. Well, Jon Guy, all the way from Colorado, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Dr. Harriet Hall, MD, known to thousands as the Skepdoc, a retired family physician and former Air Force flight surgeon. She writes about medicine, so-called complementary and alternative medicine, science, quackery, and critical thinking. Harriet now has a free course, a series of 10 video lectures on science-based medicine and alternative medicine. The videos and an accompanying course guide can be found by following the link at skepdoc.info or by visiting web.randy.org/educational-modules.html. Topics covered in the series are science-based medicine versus evidence-based medicine, what is CAM, chiropractic, acupuncture, homeopathy, naturopathy and herbal medicine, energy medicine, miscellaneous alternatives, pitfalls in research, and science-based medicine in the media and politics. Harriet covers each topic in a matter-of-fact, no-nonsense way that's sure to educate and entertain. Skepdoc.info.
And now, a reading from the Book of Tim with Tim Mendham. I'm here with Tim Mendham. Tim, we're going to be talking about the Australian Skeptics Bed Spoon Award because we are sniffing around for more nominations, I think.
We are. Sniffing around is actually quite appropriate.
It is.
We're sniffing here, sniffing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've opened up the phones. People can phone in.
So they can phone in a
Speak
spoon.
to an operator. Preferably not. You can email us, actually.
Yeah.
We are opening up nominations for the annual Ben Spoon Award.
Well, they've been open for a while, but we're just encouraging people to...
Yeah, we do it all the time. We encourage people.
We can encourage people a lot. We encourage you to bend your spoons and send them in. No, it's not that sort of spoon, is it really? No.
The spoon is, of course,
it's
awarded.
real. It's real.
It's real spoon.
Yeah, real
I've got
spoon.
it right here. Richard, it's very heavy because it's made out of gopher wood from Noah's Ark.
Yes.
With a spoon bent by Uri Geller himself, actually,
Amazing.
when he wasn't aware of it. But he does that. The spoon has been going since 1982.
Yeah.
And we've awarded it every year, apart from 1988, I think it was, when nothing happened.
Yeah, it was boring year.
Boring year. But the spoon is awarded to the perpetrator of the most preposterous piece of paranormal or pseudoscientific piffle.
Piffle, as Barry Williams used to say.
But we give it to someone who's performed something particularly noteworthy, outrageous, during the year from one convention to the next.
So we're looking for people or companies who make outrageous claims or try to put a shonk on somebody or I don't know what. I mean, what do we have?
Just say something silly, yeah.
Something silly. We've had in the past people who claimed that the Colossus of Rhodes would be discovered in Australia.
Yep. And that was a good one. We had a psychic dentist.
What was a psychic dentist?
He would come and fix your tooth decay psychically. He came actually from America, but he was performing here on a tour. And he then had to go back to America before the teeth were fixed. Psychic dentist, that's a good one. There was another one. The Melbourne Metropolitan Board of Works brought out an American psychic to locate heritage buildings or the foundations of them.
Yeah.
And all the buildings she found looked like American buildings, American barns and things, nothing like Australian. People said
Peter Brock, the famous racing car driver,
with
for
his
polarizer based on argon energy.
Yes, which really had nothing in it. But
that's not a good thing.
Yeah, that was a good thing. And they all went through all sorts of various technologies and...
that's Peter Brock now.
That's Peter Brock, right? His spirit is flying over us. Dropping a polarizer.
Various people like the Homeopathy Plus outfit.
They won, as did the Australian Vaccination Network,
That's
of course.
Right, yes.
Some of them are silly, some of them are quite serious. The ABC's won it a couple of times. 3 times,
I think.
And SBS has won it. That's a special
TV,
broadcasting service.
Yeah. For medical stuff, mostly.
For medical stuff.
Yeah.
Quite a few newspapers and things have run it. Of course, Mike Willesee.
For Signs from God.
Yes, well, he actually won a positive award and a negative.
A negative.
He's the only person to have done that.
He's a good, well-respected journalist, but he was a very religious man. So he came across somebody displaying stigmata, and he decided that was really a sign.
I think he was facing the shadows of mortality at the time, actually.
Well, he only died a few years ago, but he won the Ben Spoon some decades ago.
It wasn't that long ago, but I mean, it was sort of farewell.
Anyway, I think it was.
We can do some research on
the
that.
The 90s, I think he won that.
Was it? I thought it was a bit later. Anyway. So what? But we have had other people. I mean, sad to say, the head of the CSIRO got it once for proposing dowsing as a...
And dowsing might be in the offing again. We're looking at possibly nominating somebody who's come to our attention recently, who's awarded the Bino.
I think we should.
We should nominate this person.
But of course, probably the most famous winner of the Ben Spoon has been quite recently, and the only person to have won it twice.
Yeah.
quite a noble achievement, actually. Pete Evans, or Paleo Pete, as we like to call him.
For his magic flashing light devices.
That was the second one he won for. Yeah. His flashing light thing that looked like a disco light you could buy and put in your home. That cured all sorts of...
Well, he got into trouble for proposing this device could help with COVID, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He got fined by the TGA. Yeah. His previous one was, of course, his bone broth recipe for children, for babies, which was quite deadly. And his publisher withdrew the book that included that recipe. Now, Pete's still around. Not quite as successful as he was, but and I'm sure the Ben Spoon played a major part in that.
Sure,
actually.
it did. Now, people can look at all the past winners of the Ben Spoon Award and also nominate somebody. We say it's really for Australia, isn't it? Somebody has to be doing...
it really has to be in Australia.
Yeah, it has to be an Australian company or an individual or something like that. And if you... if you decide that these people are making an outrageous claim, paranormal or pseudoscientific, maybe free energy. That was a winner one year, a free energy device, which didn't work.
Funny that.
It was funny that. They can nominate, right?
They can nominate. They can just go onto our website, which is skeptics.com.au, look up the About. I think it's on the awards section there. Yeah. And there's the Ben Spoon Award there. So you just click on that. You can see the history of the Ben Spoon, what it's all about, and click on a link to make a nomination.
Yeah, so keep your eyes out, people. In Australia, if you find someone like that, let us know. I mean, let us know. We can, size up your nomination. Maybe we won't think it's appropriate. Maybe we'll think it's great. We don't know yet.
Well, yeah, the nominations are open. We can't be slanderous about this. But
no. Don't nominate somebody just for the wrong reasons.
Yes, I mean, and it has to be a sceptical issue, really, that pseudoscience or paranormal, as we say.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, by all means, nominate them, and deadline is probably early November.
All right.
And the winner will be announced at National Convention.
Just don't nominate us, because people always do that. And
yeah, they do, don't they? Yeah. I'd like to win sometime, actually.
You? I'd like to win our $100,000 prize for paranormal powers.
I'd much rather win the Ben Spoon, actually.
You'd rather win the Ben Spoon?
I actually got it with me, so I can actually easily put my name on the plaque.
I'm a psychic. My name is Psychic Carrie.
I'm Ross.
Oh, what a pleasure to meet you. Of course, I knew your name was Ross, as I am a psychic. But please, take a seat.
Well, I was hoping we could talk about my
podcast. Yes, I know.
It's called Oh No, Ross and Carrie.
Yes.
We investigate fringe science, spirituality, and claims of the paranormal. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Yes. This whole podcast, it sounds like it's been a real challenge for you lately.
Actually, it's a lot of fun.
Yes, exactly. Because it's so fun.
I don't know how you do it.
This will be $75.
Okay, that seems fair.
Oh no, Ross and Carrie.
At MaximumFun.org. You knew it was a .org.
I have a gift.
Hello everyone, this is Adrienne Hill from Canada, here to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics Newsletter. There might be a few more giggles than usual, since there seems to be some extra silliness this week. This is newsletter number 154. You can subscribe to this newsletter and get it delivered to your inbox every other week, complete with links to all the stories. Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. But now, let's see what Tim Mendham has for us this week. Hi all! As we head towards Skepticon 2022 in Canberra, a highlight of the annual event is the announcement of the Skeptical Awards. And a highlight of the highlights is the Bent Spoon, awarded to the perpetrator of the most preposterous piece of paranormal or pseudoscientific piffle of the year. It's your chance to nominate your least favorite person for this dubious honor, so they can join the list of nominees. In the meantime, there's always the good and the bad, the happy and the sad news from the skeptical world. Read on. Okay, Tim, we'll do just that. Australian Skeptic News. Bent Spoon Award nominations now open. Nominations are now open for the Australian Skeptics Bent Spoon Award, one of the least sought-after credits in the skeptical world, or any world for that matter. Luminaries who have been past winners include Paleo Pete Evans, twice, Larry Marshall, head of the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, who is into water divining, former MP Craig Kelly, RMIT, Judy Wileman and the University of Wollongong, Meryl Dorey and the AVN, or aka the AVSN, and now the AVRN, the Pharmacists of Australia, and a psychic dentist. If you would like to put someone forward for this non-prestigious award, then go to the Bent Spoon page at skeptics.com.au. AVN appeal rejected. The federal court has rejected the Australian Anti-Vaccination Network's appeal against a judgment that found it had no standing to represent members of the community. A blow to its ego. See the background to the case in the sample article from the June issue of The Skeptic. But in this latest stage, the judges, who handed down their judgment yesterday, reportedly found the case put forward incompetent. We're not quite sure if that applied to the case or the people putting it, but it's been an expensive lesson for the AVN, which raised close to $650,000 through a campaign on the Gives and Go Christian crowdfunding site. Now, there's the issue of costs. Biorhythms and their influence on human behavior. A chronobiologist looks at a trend from years gone by and doesn't welcome the comparison with their own field. Alternative medicines that might actually work. Isn't it called medicine then? Edzard Ernst, a leading skeptic on alt-med, or as he calls it, so-called alternative medicine, or SCAM for short, lists 5 alt-med products that might actually work. We're not so sure. Some have been highly criticized in the past. For the record, they are St. John's wort, TENS machines, glucosamine for cancer, melatonin for sleep, and meditation for lower back pain. But it's in the Daily Mail, so it must be true. Loch Ness Monster is plausible. The crux of the matter is plausible, not that Nessie actually exists. Researchers found the fossil of a plesiosaur in the Sahara, which indicates that the presumed marine-only reptile might also have lived in fresh water. Loch Ness is freshwater, so hey, presto! Nitpicking note, a plesiosaur is not a dinosaur, so don't start saying, quote, there's a dinosaur in Loch Ness, end quote. Or for that matter that, quote, there's a Loch Ness monster in Loch Ness, end quote. Mysterious red glow over Atlantic starts panic. Spoiler, it's fishing boats, much like the famed New Zealand UFO scare in the late 1970s. The September issue of The Skeptic magazine is in the works, with a major look at the mysterious and often secretive world of organized exorcism in Australia, and not just from the Catholic Church. Plus, the latest on our Hall of Fame for alt-med practitioners dowsing priests, tidal waves, and frogs. Meanwhile, there is still the June 2022 issue to look at, or subscribe to. A sample article from that issue on the trials, literally, and tribulations of the Australian Anti-Vaccination Network can be read here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. To subscribe to The Skeptic, go to our shop to sign up for a hard copy or digital edition, or both. The digital is offered free to those who take up the hard copy version. Items of interest. Travel tip number 1. Ghosts. America's first legally haunted house. That's not haunted by lawyers, but a property dispute that led to a court case where the judge found that the owner should have declared the Victorian-era house haunted prior to a sale. The fact that the house is not far from the Sleepy Hollow of Headless Rider fame surely means the ghost should not have been a surprise. Interestingly enough, I learned about this when I revamped the haunted house page on Wikipedia. So it's there, check it out. Travel tip number 2, ghosts again. 5 haunted locations in South Australia, ranging from a shop, an arcade, an asylum, and all the way up to 2 whole towns. No mention of the mall's balls, however. Does anyone else recall them being called Donny's Balls, after the former Premier, Don Dunstan? Travel tip number 3. You guessed it. Ghosts. Hair-raising ghost tours in Singapore. None of these look particularly scary to us, not even the walking tour of the 10 Courts of Hell in Haw Par Villa, the tourist spot set up by the Tiger Bomb Man. Follow-up. Shock and horror. Asparagus wrong. Last newsletter, we mentioned the psychic who consults asparagus and got the UK Tory leadership winner wrong. Well, this time, she picked the outcome of the Euro 2022 women's football competition on a morning TV program, predicting the English team, the Lionesses, would defeat Germany 3-2. They did win, but the final score was 2-1. Moral of the story: you still can't trust asparagus, but the veggies seem to have a greater affinity with soccer than politics. Second moral: don't put asparamanцers on TV, as a lot of viewers complained. Back to silliest story of the week. Ghost hand in photo sparks debate. Oh dear. Lots of theories about this watery image, from believers to disbelievers, but no one puts forward the theory that seems obvious to us: a foot at the end of a bent leg. As an aside, I will be talking about ghost photography at the Australian Skeptics in the pub on August 25th. I'm really looking forward to it, except that it is 3 a.m. my time. But I heard somewhere, most likely not from my doctor, that sleep is highly overrated. So looking forward to seeing you. Now, the really silliest story of the week. Geller warns Putin on nuclear weapons. He really is suffering from attention deficit disorder or something. Bane of the cutlery industry, Uri Geller, is saying he would use, quote, every last molecule of mind power, end quote, to prevent the Russian leader from launching a nuclear attack. He warns that, quote, your mission control computers will crash, your navigation systems will fail, and your missiles will malfunction, end quote. And China should watch out as well. Phew, glad that's all sorted. Well, that's all for now. This is Adrienne Hill signing off from the land of an apparent $10,000 reward being offered for proof of the existence of the Sasquatch, which was posted in the year 1980 here in Calgary. How do I know this? Because Tim Mendham has a copy of this poster. In Australia. Go figure.
Bachelor of Seance. You're a Bachelor of Seance, so I guess that means you know how to constantly keep in touch with those who've had to go, and how to summon up their spirits, if they're slightly willing, and speak to the dead. Why, that really is quite thrilling. Does this gift which you have mean you could talk to pets? And do you do it via the ether, or through the media of vets? Could you get in contact, say, with my dear departed cat? Or having been once run over, is that the end of that? And what about my dog? Do you think you'd hear him bark from that big doggy playground, the dead dog departed park? Having made a connection, could I be absolutely sure that the dog you were communing was the pet I'm pining for? I'm worried about the chance of the wrong contact being made, that you might get a canine with which I never played, but someone else's pet which wouldn't answer to my call. Or, perish the thought, you'd get no dead dog soul at all. No, I might just have to wait until I join my passed-on pets. It seems you might be trying to lay off my psychic bets, And as for my parents, well, although you have that ticket, I think the school was fooling, so you know where you can stick it.
It's time once again to dive back into those lovely digital archives from around the world in the segment we call Trove, because normally we're looking at the Australian archives of newspapers and gazettes and magazines and journals and periodicals and who knows what. This week we're going to be looking again across the ocean to the United States, and we're concentrating on a man I've met several times over the years, Professor Ray Hyman. And according to Wikipedia, Ray Hyman, born in 1928, is Professor Emeritus of Psychology at the University of Oregon in Eugene, Oregon, and a noted critic of parapsychology. Hyman, along with James Randi, Martin Gardner, and Paul Kurtz, is one of the founders of the modern skeptical movement. He is the founder and leader of the Skeptics Toolbox. Hyman serves on the Executive Council for the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. It goes on to say that aside from his scholarly publications and consultation with the U.S. Department of Defense in scrutinizing psychic research, one of his most popular articles is 13 Points to Help You, quote, amaze your friends with your newfound psychic powers, end quote, a guide to cold reading. Hyman retired in 1998 but continues to give talks and investigate paranormal claims. In July 2009, he appeared at the Amazing Meeting 7 in Las Vegas. Indeed, that's where I think I met Ray for the first time. Also in 2011 and 2012. And the article goes on and on about the works of Ray Hyman. It's quite extensive. Of course, he was an early and noted critic of such people as Uri Geller. And whenever I think about Ray Hyman, of course, I am reminded of Hyman's maxim, which goes along the lines of, do not try to explain something until you are sure there is something to be explained. And this is a very solid guide in skepticism and critical thinking and investigations. Now, this means that you don't waste time trying to explain something if the event you're trying to explain might not ever have happened. If somebody comes to you and says, how do you explain the fact that water diviners find water with 100% accuracy? Well, of course, you have to establish, first of all, that water diviners can find water with 100% accuracy. Since that's not been established, you don't have to explain it. If somebody says to you, how do you explain the fact that airline pilots see alien spaceships all the time? Well, first you have to establish that airline pilots do see alien spaceships then and only then. So it can save a lot of time. Here's a clip of Ray Hyman in the early 90s when he appeared on a James Randi special called The Secrets of the Psychics.
Needless to say, my message isn't always popular. My friend Ray Hyman is a psychologist, and he has an idea why.
We seem to be taken as we're taking something away and not giving something in return. Yes. And these people want something, they're looking for something, and I think we have to understand what is it they're searching for and what they're seeking.
Ray has an insider's perspective on these questions. He once worked as a professional palm reader. On a recent visit to Florida, he allowed me to observe while he gave readings to 2 volunteers.
Now, I want to look at a few other things before we go very far. Look at your thumb, which is most important.
Ray started reading palms to help put himself through college.
There's a little narrowing of the second joint here. That's tact. That suggests tactfulness.
At the time, he was convinced there was nothing to it.
This is the spiritual mental. I had no belief that it would work. But to be convincing, I did read the books and I did study the lines the way and told it as it's supposed to be told. And to my surprise, it worked. And then I became a very rabid believer in palm reading. There is a break in your lifeline. This is your lifeline right here. So you've had some physical problems. You still may have some problems here, some medical problems of some sort.
He was right about that I had some health problems. Is there anything there about my mother?
About your mother. The one thing, the thing that's clear is that right from the beginning, you didn't want to be dominated by her. You wanted to make up your own mind about what your life is going to be like and so on.
I have been very headstrong when it comes to my mother. She has kind of tried to dominate me sometimes, and I've rebelled against it.
At the same time, you wanted to be on your own terms and stuff like that.
He was pretty right on the money with a lot of things. Maybe he's got some part to himself that others are not in touch with, and he knows these things.
Concerned about the relationship between your mother and yourself.
As a palm reader, Ray was quite successful.
I was saying...
Then a college friend bet him that he would do just as well if he told his subjects the opposite of what he read in their palms. He decided to give it a try.
And I did this on my first client, and she didn't say a word. She had no reaction at all, which was very spooky to me because I'm used to feedback. I thought it was because I bombed, but it turned out because she was so stunned I was so accurate. And this was really a shock to me because I had done everything wrong. So I did it the next client wrong. Then I realized it doesn't make any difference what you tell them. It's more what you convince them, how good you are, and what you get them to believe.
As a professional psychologist, Ray is very much aware of the role that careful observation can play in a reading.
You're living in a strange world. It'd be better if you were living maybe 50, 40 years ago in some ways.
I've always said that. I should have been born a long time ago.
This present world presents problems for you, and you're not too happy with it. You'd be much. And from the way she was dressed and so on, I could say that she'd rather be living in an earlier time than today. In fact, she was dressed for an earlier time anyway. There's a change. There's been, there for a while looked like you had 2 jobs or 2 careers, I'm not sure. And very recently you have switched. In fact, there's been a major career change.
I've been in the same career for 6 years. Next year I'm thinking about changing careers, but I haven't done it yet, so he could just be a little off in his timing.
If you set people up right, you can tell them most anything. If they really got a creative and intelligent mind, they can make sense out of it no matter how crazy it seems to be. They can find a way of reinterpreting it so that it really fits them like a glove. This person wants me to succeed. She'll work out some accommodation.
But now, let's turn to some newspaper reports and items that mention Ray Hyman over the years. And our first port of call, our first newspaper we find is the Alton Telegraph, dated the 4th of February 1988. And this is in the section called Entertainment. Debunker visits SIUE. Mentalist Ray Hyman will take a critical look at psychics and scientists in a 7:30 p.m. discussion Monday at Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. Hyman, a psychology professor at the University of Oregon, is concerned with the question of why human beings tend to readily accept supernatural explanations for what is often natural occurrences in the universe. The professor has produced 30 publications critically evaluating parapsychology and related claims, and is one of the founders of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal. Hyman is also on the editorial board of the group's journal, The Skeptical Inquirer. The lecture, with demonstrations, magic tricks, and experiments to illustrate points, is in the Communications Building Theatre. It is the second in a series of Magic, Science and Society presented by the SIUE Department of Biological Sciences. Tickets are free, but seating is restricted to 400. Tickets may be obtained in room 1330 of the Science Building by calling 692-3927 or by writing to the SIUE at Box 1651, Edwardsville, Illinois, 62026. I would have loved to have been there for that presentation way back in 1988. And the accompanying photograph looks like a publicity photograph of Ray Hyman. Ray Hyman promises the truth behind psychic phenomena, and he's sort of got a strange rope as if he's about to do a conjuring trick. And now we turn to the pages of the Arlington Heights Daily Herald, suburban Chicago, dated the 24th of October, 1995. In a section called Dowsing for the Dead, Unearths a Controversy by Bert Constable. 6 old graves. That's what I detected as I methodically walk the width and breadth of this lone empty lot in Schomburg's Timbercrest subdivision while carrying 2 wire coat hangers I fashioned into witching sticks. The wires bent into the shapes of pistols with extra long barrels and held parallel to the ground mysteriously cross whenever I step over a grave. Yep, this is definitely the final resting place for 6 long-dead suburbanites. Either that or I've found a half-dozen cable TV hookups. I'm not sure because I'm just a novice when it comes to the art of dowsing for dead bodies. And witching sticks, also known as dowsing rods or divining rods, are the best way to find old graves, says Donald Grenke, past president of the Illinois Cemetery Association.
I've done it hundreds of times,
Grenke says.
I've been in this business for well over 40 years now. Believe me, it works.
The people of Schomburg want to find out if there are bodies buried in this lot before anyone builds a home there. Communities have brought him to locate old graves, and
they were all exactly where we said they were,
he boasts. He even brought a fancy set of witching sticks made of metal rods floating in wooden handles.
We have had our set for 25 years,
says Grenke, who runs a funeral home and cemetery in Belvedere near Rockford. Dowsing historically refers to people who claim to use forked sticks. Limbs from fruit trees and willows are the twigs of choice to find water. Some folks still hire a dowser to locate the best spot to dig a well, says Brenda Paquin, director of the American Society of Dowsers at Danville, Vermont.
But dowsing,
Paquin adds,
is not just for water.
Nope, dowsing is just for the superstitious, insists skeptic Ray Hyman, professor of psychology at the University of Oregon and author of the book Water Witching USA.
All good studies show that dowsers can't do what they say they can do,
Hyman says.
It's nothing more than a random device.
The National Groundwater Association in Columbus, Ohio, used to sell anti-dowsing T-shirts with the international no symbol over a dowser. But the group has mellowed in recent years and now looks upon dowsing as nothing more than
a harmless superstition,
says Anita Stanley, a publisher with Groundwater Publishing. Still, she adds,
we'd contend you'd be better off contacting a professional contractor than to pay someone to walk around with a forked stick.
While Hyman says dowsers seem to be a sincere bunch who believe in the art, the movement of the sticks is nothing more than, quote, idiomotor action, end quote. That means dowsers move the rods themselves, unconsciously. I put the handle end of my rods in empty cardboard toilet rolls to assure that my hands don't touch the wires. But Hyman says I still manipulate the rods by moving my hands. When the rods are suspended from wires without anyone touching them, they never cross over graves, Hyman notes. Grenke counters Hyman's logic by suggesting the human carrying the sticks adds an integral element to the process.
Not everybody can use them,
Grenke says, recalling how one skeptical employee couldn't even get the rods to cross over marked graves. Grenke, who lives next to his cemetery, says he's never had any psychic experiences with ghosts or the supernatural, isn't superstitious, and doesn't care about electromagnetic fields or a college professor debunking his use of witching sticks.
No one has really made a big deal out of how it works,
Grenke says.
You're a believer after you've used them.
And finally we go to the year 1994, the 4th of December, in a journal called Brazosport Facts, in the section Seen and Heard. And this is a story by Keoki Davidson, printed originally in the San Francisco Examiner. Haunted Deep Fryer. Hijinks amongst the toys entice ghost hunters. Every day is Halloween for today's ghost hunters. Professional ghost hunting isn't the lucrative business it was in the Bill Murray comedy Ghostbusters. The heyday of scientific phantasm chasing passed a century ago. Yet a handful of true believers still lug magnetometers, infrared cameras, video cameras and other gadgets through spooky places, where they investigate the oddest things. A haunted deep fryer at a Japanese restaurant in Rome, Georgia. A female ghost who supposedly frequents a Moss Beach, California restaurant. A case of spectral hijinks at a Sunnyvale, California toy store. Maybe physical reality isn't as we define it today, says prominent national ghostbuster and author Lloyd Auerbach of Pleasant Hill. But I would need 24th century technology to figure out what's really going on. And right behind the ghost hunters are the skeptics, who take delight in finding mundane explanations for allegedly supernatural phenomena. For example, in exposing a, quote, spirit photograph, end quote, as crude fakery, or, quote, ghostly, end quote, voices as rusty pipes or eerie footsteps, as vibrations from the staircase next door. I was just asked to give advice for a court trial in New Jersey, said University of Oregon psychology professor Ray Hyman, a veteran critic of parapsychology and skeptic about ghosts. People who bought a house are suing the previous owners for not telling them it was haunted. Modern ghost hunting is the faint embers of a 19th century cultural firestorm called spiritualism. Back then, mediums were the rage and society's blue bloods, from esteemed scientists to acclaimed politicians, sat in dark seances, holding hands and hoping the spirits would speak. But the spiritualist age ended in a flurry of exposers. The magician Harry Houdini and other skeptics exposed phony mediums, and the two pioneers of spiritualism, the so-called Fox sisters, admitted they had faked spook sounds by cracking their joints. Nowadays, ghost hunting and afterlife research has been largely banished to the fringes, or beyond, of parapsychology, the so-called science of psychic phenomena, which is itself scorned by many mainstream researchers. Yet, even today, ghosts retain a hold on the modern heart. Witness the hyper-success of films such as Ghost and Ghostbusters. I saw a poll recently that said that 75% of students believe in God, and 72% believe in ghosts, Hyman said. Auerbach often finds orthodox explanations for spook sightings. Right after the 1989 earthquake, I received calls from dozens of people who said objects had moved in their homes. I found that in many cases the cause wasn't what you would think, the quake itself, but the traffic changes in the city, caused by downed freeways and bridges. I told people right after an object moves, look outside your window and see if a truck just rumbled by. Auerbach, 38, who by day is a senior instructor for the LexisNexis database service, also has investigated a purportedly haunted toy store in Sunnyvale and came away doubting anything odd was going on. But he's impressed by the accounts of a ghost at Moss Beach Distillery, a cliffside restaurant on Highway 1 south of San Francisco that was once featured in TV's Unsolved Mysteries. Auerbach took a magnetometer into the restaurant, which overlooks the Pacific, and claims that something, nature unknown, was disrupting the device. Ironically, Auerbach is friends with Bob Steiner, a nationally known magician who is also a founder of the Bay Area Skeptics, a group that delights in exposing pseudoscience and occult claims. Well, there we are, just a few references to Ray Hyman in newspapers over the years. There are more. I have discovered more, quite lengthy articles which mention Ray Hyman here and there. There's one very interesting one about Uri Geller from 1977, which mentions Ray Hyman. And this this one is written by a psychic, which is very strange. But anyway, that's a very lengthy article and only mentions Ray Hyman in part of it. Maybe next time I'm up in Oregon, I might have the chance or make the opportunity to once again meet up with Professor Ray Hyman. But no matter where you are in the world, you can take advantage of the interesting resources at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au or your own local digitised newspapers, because you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Coming up on next week's show, the Book of Tim will look at micronations. These are these funny little principalities and countries that people set up. They have no real legal standing, but they can be a lot of fun. I hope to bring you that report about the mind-body wallet, the mind-body spirit. In the Trove segment, we're going to be looking at the Min light, that mysterious light, and also another poem by Jim Wilshire all about the Min light. And also don't forget, as Adrienne mentioned in her reading of the Skeptics Newsletter, Adrienne Hill will be our guest on the 25th of this month in the evening here, Sydney Australian time, for Skeptics in the Pub. Of course, that's online, so no matter where you are around the world, you can tune in and join us for Adrienne Hill talking about ghosts. Thank you to those people who continue to support the Skeptic Zone at skepticzone.tv by your Patreon or your PayPal micropayments. It means the show keeps going. But now it's time for me to keep going, and I'll be back next week. So for now, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.